Hey, Tuesday. Welcome to it. The gaffes just keep on coming. President Biden once again confusing the entire world with a claim that makes no sense whatsoever. This time, he said he was raised by, wait for it, Puerto Ricans. I wish this was fake. Take a look.
We have a very, in relative terms, large Puerto Rican population in Delaware, relative to our population. We have the 8th largest black population in the country, and between all minorities, we have 20% of our state is minority. And so I was sort of raised in the Puerto Rican community at home politically.
No, you weren't. Not even a little. And before you laugh and say, Joe, you're not Puerto Rican? We found some evidence from 2020 that may corroborate his claim. Watch.
I have one thing to say. Hang on here.
All right. There you go. Dance a little bit, Joe. Come on.
I tell you what, if I had the talent of any one of these people, I'd be elected president by acclamation.
Yeah, it's our guy, this bony little finger on the nuke button. That was then candidate Biden playing the Puerto Rican pop hit Despacito on his phone during a campaign stop in Florida at a Hispanic Heritage Month event. No less, all joking aside, this is just the latest in a long line of gaffes from El Presidente. In fact, just last week, remember this cringy blunder?
And I want to thank all of you here for including bipartisan elected officials like Representative Governor, Senator Braun, Senator Booker, Representative Jackie. Are you here? Where's Jackie? I didn't think she was going to be here to help make this a reality.
Yeah. Jackie's mom had to clarify she's in heaven with Jesus. The Jackie he's referring to, the late Indiana Congresswoman Jackie Walorski, tragically died in an August car crash. The president even lowered the White House flags in her honor when she passed. He called the family to offer condolences. He apologized to her family last week, but these episodes and others, including a questionable story about befriending a dead Amtrak conductor, or of course the mysterious corn pop, have led to repeated speculation about the president's mental health and acuity. So with Putin threatening World War III, is this really who we want in charge of the nuclear football? Let's break it down with tonight's Man Panel. We've got editor-in-chief of Ricochet. It's Jon Gabriel and his books. We've got the host of the Richard Fowler Show. He's a Fox News contributor, coincidentally named Richard Fowler, Washington Monument, and director of the Libertarian Institute and editorial director of antiwar.com. Scott Horton is back. Hello, gentlemen. So, John, I will start with you. Yeah, it's funny because it's silly and it's absurd that this is where we are, but this isn't just a guy. This isn't Lyndon Johnson briefing his chickens after he'd left the White House. This is the current occupant. So what does it say about the state of his mental union?
Yeah, it's very sad, to say the least. Lost my dad a couple of years back due to Alzheimer's and dementia and all that. Anybody who's dealt with that sees what's going on with Biden and screams elder abuse. This is not good. This is not good at all, especially in such a dangerous world. We have this mess, every couple of days he's sending, another $1 trillion over to Ukraine, blowing off nuclear threats from Putin. Look, we need some people in charge who know what's going on. And what we have here is like in the old medieval days when you would have an aged king on the throne, you would have what they called a regency to run the things behind the scenes. And that's what we have here. We have a Biden regency, not a Biden presidency, where his advisors are running things and they're not even on the same page.
Well, they're not really doing a great job either, because Richard, so many of the distractions come from having to clean up what the president and the vice president say, or their misstatements. Oh, there he goes over on the bike. That's always a hard one to watch. It's pretty constant. And I don't think there's any way of rationalizing this as a good and positive thing for us or for the world, Richard.
A couple things here. Number one, it's obviously awful when you see the president make a gaffe, but it's worth pointing out that Joe Biden's been gaffing for a couple of decades, right?
Yeah, we told you that before he was elected.
So this is sort of baked in when voters just, yeah. Yeah, when voters voted for him in 2020, they sort of made this decision that they looked past the gaffes and said he was the best person for the job. Number one, and I think number two, if the facts are anything here, while he's been the sitting president, what we've seen under this presidency is an expansion of NATO. We've seen this president really sort of show what a But I think that actually matters. For a long time, for decades, we've seen countries that have remained very neutral in Europe saying we don't want to be on either side. Finland, for example, saying, wait a minute, Russia's become so ridiculous that we're going to join NATO and we're going to ally with Europe and America and Canada and other countries say what Russia's doing is terrible, and we're going to ally with Ukraine and we're going to send aid to Ukraine. I think that matters here in a world in which Russia is literally, the Russian troops are literally falling apart, and Putin looks like the crazy person here who's saber rattling with nuclear weapons.
Yes. So having said all of that, Scott, I think the point that Richard is underscoring is that it's a very, very insane time in the world. Anything can happen. Anything bad can happen. So do we really want someone who's suffering from such incredible, precipitous mental decline in charge of things when he's not doing it well?
No, I mean, the guy's clearly out of his mind. In the 60 Minutes interview, he was asked, so are you still mentally sharp? And he went off on some rambling giant tangent about how sharp he is. And there's a few things at issue here, but, most importantly, I think is the very serious question of who is actually in charge?
Yes.
It can't be that Joe Biden is really calling the shots here. But is it Sullivan? I mean, he's just the national security advisor. It's not exactly in the chain of command. It could be Blinken. I don't think Lloyd Austin, it seems that ambitious. If it's Blinken, well, that comes with its own host of problems. But the fact that we're even talking about this is, absolutely a crisis. And then as far as what Richard said there, I mean, God, do you remember 20 years ago when liberals pretended to be anti-war and bragging about NATO expansion and arming Ukraine in the midst of a war right on Russia's border, threatening nuclear holocaust? And you're talking about congratulations to him? And that's what's supposed to rally people to support the president? You've got to be kidding me.
Well, it sounds like Richard and Scott are in
let's be very
here.
clear.
Yeah. Well, you got to be. I'll give you 15 seconds to respond,
clear.
Richard, but we got to move on.
It's not like we wanted this war, Kennedy.
Yeah.
We didn't want this war, Kennedy. I mean, this war was a provocative war taken by Putin, and what we're doing here is defending our ally, the Ukrainians. And what we see happening in Ukraine is the Ukrainians are fighting a valiant effort to push Putin and his mongrels back from them taking away their country, a sovereign nation at that, to be very clear.
Okay, very quick response, Scott.
Biden did want this war.
Yes, he did.
Biden did want this war, and they said they were carefully calibrating the amount of weapons they were pouring into Ukraine.
Okay.
Yeah, he
been involved in Ukraine for a long,
and Hillary
long
Clinton.
time.
They said they wanted to replicate Afghanistan as they did in the 1980s in the war against the Soviet Union under Carter and Reagan against the Russians here in Ukraine. They said it over and over again last December and January. Hillary Clinton said it in a 5-minute rant on MSNBC. Yes.